Krishna. Welcome to another session of Kids Krishna Katha. And let's start. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhaja Jananandana. Yashodanandana Bhaja Jananandana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Krishna Krishna Jaya जय प्रेम से श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय श्री राधा की गिरधारी भगवान की जय। जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई की जय। श्री गौरताय की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Gauranga. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Gurudev ki jai. Hare Krishna to you all. Welcome back to another session of Kids Krishna Katha, where we discuss the glories and pastimes of Shri Krishna and his pastimes. So, today we are going to be looking at the wonderful pastime of the appearance of Lord Krishna in the material world. Janmashtami, which is the most important day in the Vaishnava calendar. It's the day we look forward to. It's the only day that we are allowed to stay up till midnight to witness a spectacular sight. The Maha Abhishek of Shri Krishna and Balram. Shri Krishna Janmashtami ki jai. So, before we start with the story, who is Krishna? Krishna is, as we know, the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the seed-giving Father. And He is always there for us. He is always looking after us, always seeing to our benefit. Just like parents see over their children. When parents' children grow up, they go their different ways. But the parents are always looking after their children. And even if the children don't want their parents' advice or don't want to follow their instructions, the parents are always there for them. They will never leave their children's side. So Krishna is just like that. He is always there for us. So I'm going to recite a few very nice verses about Lord Krishna. Ishvaraha Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So this verse is the first verse of the Brahma Samhita, and the translation is: Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and He is the prime cause of all causes. So, Krishna is Sat, Chit and Anand. He is eternal, blissful and spiritual. So what is the meaning of bliss? And what is the meaning of eternal? And what is the meaning of these three words? So what is the meaning of these three words? So eternal is forever, right? Permanent. And He has a spiritual body. So we as humans, we have a material gross body, and it is made out of many elements, such as we have a layer of skin, and then we have blood and bones and flesh and muscle. But Krishna has a spiritual body, and He is eternally blissful. So in the material world, we know this word called happiness, and we feel happy sometimes. But actually in the material world, there is always distress, always worry, always anxiety. But none of those things are there in the spiritual world. So in the material world, no one can ever be happy. They are always worried about something. Something is always going on in the mind. But sometimes when we feel happy, the distress and worry are just coming in small doses. So the happiness is just distress, but in small doses. But in the spiritual world, happiness is actually bliss, because bliss is eternal, whereas happiness is just temporary. When there are bad things going on, good things will come. And when there are good things going on, then bad things will come in the material world. But in the spiritual world, everyone is eternally blissful. So, Krishna is Sachit Anand, and he is the origin of all. And he is the prime cause of all causes. So by him, a blade of grass moves. Or if he doesn't sanction, then a blade of grass doesn't move. So by his will, everything in this cosmic manifestation is unfolding. Another great verse, which is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 8. It's a wonderful verse, and it is the first verse of the Chaturshloki, which are 4 verses that summarize the whole Bhagavad Gita, and are very, very important verses. So if you have the time, be sure to go and read the purport and the word for word, which helps a lot, and it'd be really good if you can memorize it. So, aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Krishna says that I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise, who perfectly know this, engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So in the translation, everything is nicely said. So everything comes from Krishna. The material worlds, the material and the spiritual worlds, everything emanates from him. And the intelligent people, so devotees and people who come to the path of ISKCON, to the path of Krishna consciousness, they know what to do. They know the goal of their life, and so they worship Lord Krishna fully surrendered. So everything belongs to Krishna. Everything we have belongs to Krishna. And so the least we can do is offer whatever we can back to Krishna. So just like the verse, and another verse in Bhagavad Gita 9.26, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti uparetam ashnami praitatmanaha. So Krishna says that if one offers to me with love a fruit, flower, leaf or water, I will accept it. So whatever little we have, we must offer it to Krishna, because ultimately everything belongs to him, right? Just like a father gives his son a bar of chocolate, and so it has been paid with the father's money. But when the son, he breaks a piece off and gives it back to the father, how pleased the father feels, that satisfaction, the bliss. The father doesn't need the chocolate. He can survive without the chocolate. But he can feel the love coming from his son. So he feels so nice. So that is the exact same way how Krishna feels. Krishna doesn't need our devotion. Krishna doesn't need our offerings. But it is the love that is behind it. So we must offer whatever little we have. So, for example, if you get a certificate for doing something good at work or at school or wherever you are, so you can just offer it to Krishna and tell him that, here, this is what I've got. Thank you so much for everything that you have, the resources that you have provided for me to achieve this. And just show our gratitude to Lord Krishna. And this is with everything, not just small things. When devotees buy new houses, when they get a new house and they move in, there is a special ceremony held. The housewarming ceremony, many people call it. So it is a ceremony when the house is purified, and when anything is purified, it is offered to Krishna. And the same with everything else. So everything comes from Krishna, and we must whatever we have, we must offer it back to him. That is why whatever we eat, we always offer it to Krishna before we eat. So in that way it is purified. Otherwise whatever we are eating, it is as good as eating non-vegetarian food. And yes, so what we have, we must offer to Krishna. Now, Krishna descends to the material world for 3 reasons. And it is described in the Bhagavad Gita again. In chapter 4, text 8. There are actually 2 verses, but I'll only recite one. So, Paritrana sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Translation: in order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. So, these are the three reasons Krishna comes to the material world. To deliver the pious. So, to the pious meaning the devotees, people who serve him, the good people. And to annihilate the miscreants. So, to demolish, to finish off all the demons. So, protect his devotees, deliver the devotees, and destroy the demons, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. So over time, the principles of religion, all the knowledge that has been there, it slowly fades. It is there, but people forget about it. So to re-establish those principles, he comes down. And he comes of his own sweet will. Krishna can be staying in the spiritual world, but he is the seed-giving father of everyone, and he cares for us. And to deliver us, he comes to the material world in his many different forms and incarnations. Actually, we were with him. We were with him in the spiritual world, serving him happily. But it was by our desire to be away from Krishna that we came to the material world. But Krishna doesn't blame us. He is always there for us. We just have to open our arms and take the first step, and Krishna will embrace us in his arms and always welcome us into his heart. But we have to take the first step, as I've always said. So, let's start the wonderful story of the birth of Sri Krishna. So, here we go. Once upon a time, Vasudev, the son of Surasena, just after marrying Devaki, was going home on his chariot. So their marriage was celebrated with great pomp and show, and as they were going home on the chariot, there was a great procession. And it is very nicely described that there were very beautiful maidens dancing at the front. There were people blowing bugles, and there were flags waving from every building, and it was a great and joyous event. So, the father of Devaki, known as Devaka, had contributed a sufficient dowry because he was very affectionate towards his daughter. Now listen to this. He had contributed hundreds of chariots completely decorated with gold equipment. He was in those times, kings were so rich. He gave a handsome dowry, and it consisted of thousands of elephants and horses and chariots and weapons, a huge abundance of them, and in huge abundance. So at that time, Kamsa, the son of Ugrasen, in order to please his sister Devaki, voluntarily took the reins of the horses of Vasudev's chariot and was driving. So according to the Vedic civilization, when a girl is married, the brother takes the sister and brother-in-law to their home. Because the newly married girl may feel too much separation from her father's family, the brother goes with her until she reaches her father-in-law's house. So the full dowry, contributed of whatever, it has some specific numbers, but yeah, it says here elephants and decorated with golden garlands, then horses, chariots, and also King Ugrasen arranged for 200 beautiful girls to follow his daughter. The Kshatriya system of marriage is still current in India, dictates that when a Kshatriya is married, a few dozen of the bride's young girlfriends, in addition to the bride, go to the house of the king. And so much was given in dowry, and it was a big celebration, and everybody was so happy and jubilant. Now, while Kamsa was driving the chariot and Devaki and Vasudeva were in the back, suddenly a mighty voice proclaimed from the sky, "Kamsa, you are so foolish," it said. "You are driving the chariot of your sister and your brother-in-law. But you do not know that the 8th child of this sister will kill you." So Kamsa was terrified, and as soon as he heard this, he drew his sword, grabbed Devaki by the hair, and was just about to kill her. But Vasudeva immediately stopped him. He was horrified to see this taking place. And he began to speak with great reason and evidence. He said, "My dear brother-in-law Kamsa, you are the most famous king of the Bhoja dynasty, and people know that you are the greatest warrior and a valiant king. How is it that you are so infuriated that you are prepared to kill a woman who is your own sister at this auspicious time of her marriage? Why should you be so afraid of death? Death is already born along with your birth. From the very day you took your birth, you began to die. Suppose you are 25 years old. That means you have already died 25 years. Every moment, every second, you are dying. Why then should you be so afraid of death? Final death is inevitable. You may either die today or in 100 years. You cannot avoid death. Why should you be so afraid?" So, in this way, Vasudev gives many reasons which is supported by the Vedas. So he doesn't just give his opinion, he actually states facts on why he shouldn't kill his sister. He also says, actually death means annihilation of the present body. As soon as the present body stops functioning and mixes with the 5 elements of material nature, the living entity within the body accepts another body according to his present action and reaction. It is just as when a man walks on the street, he puts forward his foot, and when he is confident that his foot is situated on sound ground, he lifts the other foot in this way, one after another. He lifts his other foot. So in this way, one after another, the body changes, and the soul transmigrates. So just like every day we change clothes, in the same way, the soul changes bodies, just like their clothes. They're just coverings for the soul. So similarly, the living entity changes his body. From one species to another. So he must, within this material world, he must take material bodies one after another. His next particular body is offered by the laws of nature according to the actions and reactions of this life. So Vasudev is explaining all of this to Kamsa, who is infuriated and frightened. So Vasudeva appeals in this way on behalf of Devaki, trying to save her. A younger sister or brother is supposed to be protected as one's children. The position is overall very delicate, Vasudeva reasoned. If you kill her, you will go against your high reputation. So he is not just talking about the welfare of Devaki, but also the welfare of Kamsa. So Kamsa was not to be pacified because his association was demoniac. Because he associated with demoniac demons and demoniac people, although he was always a demon, although he was born in a very high class, rich, royal family. And a demon never cares for any good instruction. He is just like a determined thief. One can give him moral instruction, but it will not be effective. Similarly, those who are demoniac or atheistic by nature can hardly assimilate any good instruction, however authorized it may be. That is the difference between demigod and demon. So, difference between demigods and demons are given. And because Kamsa had bad association, he couldn't take all of this in. And so Vasudeva, after deliberating on how to save his wife, began to speak to Kamsa with great respect. And even though he was very angry at Kamsa for even attempting to kill his sister, he spoke very calmly and with apparent cheerfulness, because he wanted to be diplomatic so that he could persuade Kamsa to save his sister. So he had tried everything in his power to save Devaki by supporting his realizations and opinions with the Vedas. But Kamsa had not accepted this. And so he tried something different. My dear brother-in-law, please consider that you have no danger from your sister. You are awaiting some danger because you have heard a prophetic voice in the sky. So the prophecy. But the danger is to come from the sons of your sister, who are not present now. And who knows, they may or not be sons in the future. Considering all of this, you are safe for the present. Nor is there any cause of fear from your sister. If there are any sons born from her, I promise that I shall present all of them to you for necessary action. So, Vasudeva in this way pacifies Kamsa by saying this. Kamsa knew that the value of Vasudeva's word of honor, and he was finally convinced by his argument. And so for the time being, he desisted from doing something outrageous and returned to his home. And Vasudeva praised the decision of Kamsa, and they returned to their home. So in this way, after giving so many reasons, he finally convinced Kamsa, and so they went back to their place. In due course of time, Vasudeva and Devaki gave birth to 8 sons, and we will get into that later. But so when the first child was born, Vasudeva very reluctantly took the child to Kamsa, knowing that he had to keep his promise. After all, it isn't easy for a parent to give up his child. It's so hard. But Vasudeva was keeping his word, doing his duty. But when he went over to Kamsa, something miraculous happened. Kamsa actually said that he need not hand the first child, as the prophecy had said that the 8th child would kill him. So he felt a little compassionate towards Vasudev. And Vasudev was so surprised and amazed, but at the same time a little bit doubtful, because demoniac people like Kamsa never stand to their word like Vasudev did. But he was very happy and he hurried on his way back to his home with the first child, feeling very happy. Then, do you know what happened? Then, Narada was passing by the city and he happened to come by Kamsa's palace. And he came to Kamsa. And then what he did and what he said and what Kamsa did next is what we will look at next week, the same time, same day. And so this was part 1 of the amazing appearance of Lord Krishna. And so next week we will look at part 2. Before we conclude, there are 2 points that I'd like to highlight from what we have learned so far. So the first is association. And I have talked about this so many times, but it's very good to reinforce these kinds of things, so it just stays there in our mind. So because of bad association, of course, Kamsa was not willing to be pacified by Vasudev's reasons on not to kill his sister. So he always associated with demoniac people. So association is very important. Now some may ask or some may question the act of Kamsa's compassion. If Kamsa was really so cruel-hearted and evil, would he really give the child, return the child, the first child away? Wouldn't he just kill the child? And my dad very nicely explained to me that he was in the association of a devotee, a Mahatma, a very good soul, who was Vasudev. So even if it was for a short period of time, that association made a great impact on Kamsa, and a little bit of Vasudev's goodness rubbed off on Kamsa. And so in compassion, he said to Vasudev that he could keep the first child. So if associating with Vasudev for such a short time, someone like Kamsa can do something so different from his usual behavior, how powerful can you imagine association is? Of course, later the story unfolds a little differently, but the main point here is that association is very important and we should associate with the right kind of people. If a person associates with drunkards, even if he is from a high-class family and he has never touched a drink in his whole life, one day he will become a drunkard too. But if one associates with sadhus, and even if he doesn't like religion or any type of or just doesn't like sadhus but associates with them, he will also one day become a sadhu. So association is very important. Another thing is of how fast or how quickly relationships change. So in the first few paragraphs, Kamsa loved he loved his sister Devaki. He adored her. He would do anything for her. But as soon as the prophecy stated its words, Kamsa's love turned to hatred, and in those few moments his feelings completely changed and he wanted to kill Devaki because he was frightened. Scared of what? Scared of death. But as Vasudev said, death will come to us any day. Death is creeping upon us every single day, every single hour, every second that is passing, we are coming closer to death. So we have to hurry up and we have to engage ourselves in the devotional service of Sri Krishna, so that at the end of our lives we are prepared to go to the spiritual world. How? By chanting the names of Sri Krishna. And that is actually not very easy at the end of our lives. If we don't practice throughout our lives, then when we are on our deathbed, then it will be impossible. We don't know what kind of situation we'll be in. We might be in a coma, we might not be able to speak. So it is important to always practice throughout our lives. And so that is why there are principles, that is why there is service, that is why there is chanting, so that we are prepared. Let's all chant together the Maha Mantra, which is so very potent. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you will tune in to the next class where we will be looking at part 2 of the birth of Sri Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna.